We started this morning with music. We're going to move and touch on what we'll spend more time on Thursday, which is theatre and drama. And so I'm going to invite Ed Collier. Ed is co-artistic director of China Plate, a theatre company, kind of, and so much more. Ed, you are very welcome.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dominic. Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. What an amazing couple of days so far. My mind is absolutely fizzing with people and ideas and processes and all sorts. Now I have to focus in on what I do. Let's see how this works. Hooray, that's me. Right, so I'm here to talk a bit about theatre to create understanding. And who am I? What Della said at the start of her interview yesterday, that it's really difficult to explain what she does. And I have a very similar problem in that technically I'm a theatre producer. But what does that really mean, especially in a context like this? So for me, being a theatre producer, or more broadly a cultural producer, is about sitting somewhere in the space between artist, and in this case, policymaker, activist, neuroscientist, brain people, audience, and ideas. So we, the producers, are the people that take the needs and objectives, whether they're social, medical, political, or just fun, entertainment, and build mechanisms and machines around them to make them happen. Paraphrasing something that Louise said earlier, so we turn ideas into emotion and experiences, and Louise talked about emotion being the route to learning, which really resonated for me. So up there you can see a picture of a show, like we make shows. That's a production of Wuthering Heights we did a couple of years ago, which was amazing, brilliant piece of theatre, if I say so myself. Very unlike the film. Amazing book. It's not a love story. It's so dark. It's a revenge play. Anyway, so that's a sort of traditional piece of theatre we might make. It has a team of writers, actors, designers around it. But actually, in China Plate projects, you'll usually see that group of people plus a selection from the following of teachers, neurologists, therapists, activists, nurses, midwives, historians, arms negotiators, social sciences, scientists, community leaders, gardeners. The list goes on and on, but that gives you a kind of idea of the spread of who's involved in that process. And the most important group of people around it is the group of people for whom whatever idea it is that we're exploring is their experience, a community of people for whom that experience is real life. Sort of, again, expanding on what it is to be a theatre producer, we make work for theatres, but our work is also seen in schools, in professional contexts, in community organisations, in galleries. We worked in transport. Our work's been in prisons, in heritage houses, universities, conferences, festivals, concert halls, village halls, etc., etc. So it's a wide range. We launched in 2006. We're an independent theatre company, so we're not attached to a particular building. We're not serving a particular programme. We jump into different ideas wherever something exciting is possible. As an arts charity, we help people to make creative projects happen, from theatre shows to audio anthologies to bus stop galleries. And I'm going to, over the course of this, show you a selection of them and then take a bit of a deeper dive into one as well. So we work with and want to see creative communities coming together to deliver extraordinary experiences that fire the imagination, that affect positive change and are open to all. And what might these extraordinary experiences be? So I'm going to do this very quickly to give you an overview, and I'll go back into some of them. So first up, Please Do Not Touch by Casey Bailey, which is currently on tour. Confirmation by Chris Thorpe. To the Streets by Tim Sutton and Roy Williams. On Our Way by Nalupa Yasmin. And finally, Neighbourhood Creatives with that artist there is Rochi Rampal, but a whole bunch of artists surrounding that one. So that eclectic set of photos, which don't mean anything to you yet, what do they all have in common? For us as producers and as a theatre company, they're all exciting artistic events in their own right, and we hope that all our work is exciting in terms of quality, that as a piece of theatre it's a sort of good night out, or if, as one of them you saw back there was a bus stop, or it's a piece in public realm, then it has a positive effect on the environment that it's in. But crucially, at their heart, they're all designed to take an idea, interrogate it in some way, broadcast it, and create an emotional connection with it. And they all have slightly different machines in order to make that happen. And that's where the theatre producing comes in. So we've already got Please Do Not Touch up. So, okay, so Please Do Not Touch, which is touring at the moment, is a piece that looks at items of contested heritage. So what are, who owns, and where should historical artifacts be, belong, and be cited? So what are the perspectives around this as an idea? It's written by Casey Bailey, who was Poet Laureate of Birmingham, and it started out as a collection of poems that he wrote while sat in a heritage house asking just these questions. China Plate associate producer saw the fantastic theatrical potential of the idea, and from this we began to build that creative community of different perspectives around it. So we've heard quite a lot about silos over the course of today. One of our key motivators is to break down silos wherever we can. So we built a set of partnerships which aim to look at this from not always complementary perspectives. So one of our partnerships was with the National Trust. So they gave us access to a number of different properties where we ran workshops with their with their volunteers, and then led to performances. Volunteers who were generally older and quite white. And then we worked with a number of different organisations in Birmingham, including Free at Last, who work with young people at risk of offending. Again, workshopping the ideas, talking about ownership and perspective. Then we took those participants to the heritage houses and to performances. And then we also built a workshop programme with an amazing specialist theatre company who work in prisons and work with a group of inmates at HMP Oakwood in the Midlands, and took a performance in, but then took the ideas from that and worked with them to create their own performance over the following days. And of course, it's also a piece of theatre, and it tours theatres. But with that kind of rich world of experience and perspective around it, as a piece of theatre, it has a much greater sense of integrity, and both the piece in itself and also the way we're able to present it and talk about it is way more sophisticated. If anybody happens to be in England over the course of the next couple of weeks, it's going to be in Leeds, Brighton and Leicester, so have a look at our website. So, take you on to the next piece. So Confirmation by Chris Thorpe is is a piece of theatre that has understanding kind of integrally at its heart, but it also represents a way of work that we use across a whole kind of area of what we make. So the starting point for this piece is the idea of confirmation bias. And I'm in the wrong room to be offering a definition of this, because everybody will do a way better one than me. But broadly speaking, human beings tend to build an evidence base for what they believe rather than form their beliefs around the evidence they see. I hope that's accurate enough, crudely speaking. So with this piece, Chris, as a writer, as an artist, builds a community of people around that of expertise. So we've done this thematically with all sorts of shows. Again, some of the themes that this has been applied to include things like eating disorders, suicidality, nuclear disarmament, different areas of ecological interest, chronic regional pain syndrome. There's lots and lots and lots of them. And that sounds like a fairly depressing list as well, but actually one of the things we're able to do as theatre makers is bring fun and joy and entertainment to that, as well as complexity. And I think that's a major part of what we do. So in this version of the process, in this case, Chris spends time meeting with a wide range of academic experts, and a community of people for whom that is particularly relevant. He builds a kind of writerly, theatrical structure, picture of it, and a story route through that experience. And in this picture, you see Chris talking to, entirely by chance, because he was in the audience that night, Professor Swaran Singh, who is a professor of social community psychiatry at Warwick University, who are one of our regular partners, and one of the many academics that were part of that process. But what you don't see, and in a way the kind of audience hook into this, is that Chris also spent quite a long time with a British Nazi, somebody whose opinions he could not get an understanding of, somebody who'd seen the evidence for things in the world and come to a completely different conclusion about what that meant, testing the hypothesis to breaking point. So, next up, so again, a different sort of machine. This is a really big show. So we can do sort of really specialist thematic work, but we can also take really big ideas and reach a lot of people. So this is a piece by brilliant Tim Sutton and Roy Williams from an idea by Christopher Hayden. And it's a piece about the 1962 bus boycott that happened in Bristol, where a group of South Asian and black activists led a huge protest against the Bristol Bus Company and their racist employment practices, and ultimately won. And it led to the first legislation around racism in England a couple of years later. But it's a big musical. It's a great night out. This was a concert version of it we did in parks across the Midlands as part of the Commonwealth Games in 2022. But what it'll become is a #1 touring show to 1,500 people a night. So we can reach really big audiences with a great night out, an important political story, but also a positive story of activism and change, and we hope we leave the audience with a sense of being able to change the world themselves. And this leads into my penultimate quick flick-through idea, which is On Our Way by Nalupa Yasmin. And this does a couple of things as a machine, as an idea. You can see it's not in a theatre. This is a bus stop. It's one of 8 or 9 bus stops on the Soho Road in Handsworth in Birmingham. And alongside To the Streets, which was that huge production in a park, we didn't want to parachute into an area, do some shows, disappear again. So we worked for, I think it was about 6 months in total across Handsworth, developing a series of works, of which this is one, and employed 2 new brilliant producers, Oksana Khan and Deandra McCullough, who had connections to the communities that lived up and down that road, and were able to have conversations and build relationships in a really genuine way. And that led to a discovery for us, something that everybody there knew already, that their bus stops were in need of repair. They'd been completely neglected. The transport company hadn't prioritised that area. But with the momentum of the Commonwealth Games and working with an artist, we were able to then bring Transport for West Midlands on board, have all of the bus stops changed, and then Nalupa worked with different communities up and down that road to create what you can see there, which is sort of like fabric design or stained glass window design wraps for each of those bus stops. And those bus stops have endured amazingly well. So I haven't been for a few months, but until then, they hadn't been vandalised, they hadn't been graffitied, and it made a huge difference. So, the last on our whistle-stop tour, before going a bit deeper into one project, very quickly on this one. So Neighbourhood Creatives is a whole branch of work that we're developing at the moment, and kind of speaking to Cormac's observation about development, we don't know where this is going to go. So it's a 3-year programme. It will result in public realm art, but at the moment we're spending a whole year getting to know people. So this was one of, we've done dozens of workshops now. This is one of many workshops that popped up in a park. She is a brilliant writer. She met people who were in the park that day, began to talk to them, and from that we're beginning to build a picture of what we might achieve in the area, what a cultural output might be that would have resonance, utility, usefulness, and a sense of fun. So, how am I doing for time? 5 minutes? Okay, brilliant. So I've got 5 minutes to give you a little bit more of an insight into the last piece I'm going to talk about, which is humans, not heroes. So, so it feels really fitting to bring this in as an example. It is the COVID Day of Remembrance next Sunday, and this is a piece that came out at the beginning of the COVID pandemic for us, but it's also a really helpful kind of distillation of what we do, because our toolbox was so stripped back by that experience. So it developed over the course of a few years into a series of audio works. It was created with healthcare professionals, theatre makers, and explored the impact the COVID pandemic had on them professionally and personally. And it really proved to us that creativity can thrive within constraints. So the constrictions here were really clear. We couldn't perform live, we couldn't bring an audience together, but we knew we had the skills as artists and producers to make a difference somehow. So we reached out to various contacts we had in the healthcare world, and one conversation really took off with 2 academics at Coventry University, Kerry Wicks and Sally Pizarro. So Kerry is a registered nurse and academic, and one of her particular areas of interest is safeguarding within the emergency services. And she brought this idea to us that she was observing a tidal wave of moral injury in terms of what the emergency services were facing at that point. So brought in, let me see where to jump to, sorry. Yes, sorry. So So she was observing a tidal wave of moral injury potentially down the line, with people being asked to make huge decisions for which there was no precedent, and acting as intermediary between people who were terminally ill and families who they weren't allowed to see. So we designed a process that would allow healthcare workers to talk about their experience, share their stories, and then for those stories to be heard by colleagues, families, friends, public. And obviously, we're neither therapists nor HR specialists, but what we can do is take an idea, build a creative community of people around it, including specialists who are, and interrogate that idea, broadcast it, and create emotional connectivity. So the structure we designed was to host 8 healthcare professional participants through 2 online workshops and an online sharing. The workshops were led by a facilitator and a writer, supported by a therapist, who also acted as a mental health first aider, linked to further support. And each discrete process culminates in the creation of a roughly 10-minute audio artwork. So the participants were given the opportunity to talk about their experience, to be heard, but then also come away with a kind of artifact, a thing which they could offer people to help them understand the experiences they'd been through. I think it's also really useful to note that with this and with a lot of the stuff we do, it isn't about creating verbatim work, so it's not literally amplifying people's voices, but it's putting that authentic experience through the filter or the creative process that a writer or a team of creatives can work with, which both gives authentic representation but also anonymity as well, and somehow enables us to connect to people's imaginations in a way that can be really powerful. Am I on 2 minutes? Okay, thanks. So alongside that making process, it felt really important, as it was sitting halfway in an academic world, that we approached the academic interrogation of it with some rigour, and that's where Sally came in. So Sally, with the University of Coventry, built the ethical framework for it, and that then ran an appreciative inquiry over the course of the project through its first iterations, and then we moved on to secondary versions of it funded by the Rain Foundation, the Churchill Fellowship, and with the Royal College of Nursing, both in London and Edinburgh, where we were then also making work that was part of their COVID exhibitions. And that appreciative inquiry was published last year in Global Qualitative Nursing Research, for which I'll show you a link shortly. But in summary, Sally found really strong evidence to suggest that healthcare professionals find catharsis, community, meaning and value in sharing their stories via arts-based approaches. Audiences similarly found the resultant Humans Not Heroes exhibition of audio artworks to be moving and to have real-world impacts for them. The three, and this is the last bit before I conclude, the 3 main themes that came out of that were that people found it profoundly moving. So attendees described Humans Not Heroes as evoking feelings of anger, feelings of sadness. It brought out all of the inequalities, I think, within society, said one participant. Members of the public described their experience of listening as being very visceral and feeling like they were inside the head of the character. It felt like it was in their body. They described it as insightful, immersive, humanizing, enlightening. The second theme that came out was that of catharsis in the community. So contributions to that theme came from the healthcare professionals who participated in the workshops, and they largely reflected on how we can learn so much from each other's experience, and that bonds between people help to foster that sense of community. There was also a really strong desire amongst them to give everyone the opportunity to share their story, to validate their experience and boost morale. And then the last of the themes was that it felt like we'd achieved a historical capture for generations to come. So public participants acknowledged how they and the wider public really lacked understanding about the experiences of healthcare professionals and who they were during the pandemic. And in this sense, they felt that the audio artworks would be useful for education and training, as well as forming an audio archive. Again, being a theatre maker, it's very difficult to bring things to actually show you, which is why Humans Not Heroes is a great example. You can experience all of the pieces online via that QR code. So if anybody wanted to get a photo of that, I'll leave it up just for a moment. All of the pieces sit on the China Plate website under Humans Not Heroes. There's a lot more information about each one of them. They're an extraordinary body of work. And as you can see there, we also have a touring listening station. So for having impact in a physical space as well, that can go around to exhibitions and conferences. And actually, it's going into a tour of libraries around Warwickshire next weekend at the start of the COVID Memorial Day. So that's me. Thank you all for your time.